I'm here with. Uh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Uh, my name's Dante. Uh, I don't think anarchism works very good. And so we'll discuss that and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Uh, you're of a different school of thought when it comes to me, and I think we wanted to mostly discuss a bit about ethics, but um, we're hosting this in my Discord server, and I'll probably leave a link to that at the end, but we may see some people pop in who might want to ask some questions. But I think we could hop into it right away with a bit of an
Mhm.
ethics discussion. So there's a lot of things when that comes to anarchism working or not. There's the ethics of it, the economics of it, and then the strategy of implementing it. And you seemed most interested in the ethics, yeah?
All of those are interesting, but I would say I just think that I don't think it makes sense. I don't think I'd say strategy wise, it's to get the whole world on board. I'd say economically, it just doesn't make any sense because eventually someone's going to get lucky and take over the world economically,
Mhm.
like a company will.
Mhm.
But then ethically, I think it just doesn't make sense when it comes to like human nature. When we
Mhm.
just look at, especially, I guess the first thing I'd say is because I'm a Christian, the Bible's pretty cool. Uh, you look at even really early in the Tower of Babel, my favorite story in the Bible. And what happens is they're supposed to be being fruitful and multiplying, spreading out across the earth. But instead, they've decided to centralize and build a great state, right? I think it's just in human nature that states are going to exist. And so rather than give up on making the state good, instead you're saying, oh, get rid of the state entirely when that just isn't feasible.
Okay, so that's interesting. There's
And
you think it's if I could describe your position, it's sort of a um inevitability that a state will form.
in this world, yes,
Yeah.
right? Before, and if we were all sinless and perfect, there would be no state. Because what's the point?
Why do you think there needs to be perfection and sinlessness?
What I'm saying is that if we were perfect,
Mhm.
if we didn't like nobody lied, cheated, and stole, then you wouldn't need a state to protect people from that. And also, there would be people who are evil who would try and build a state in
Mhm.
order to do evil, right? So,
Right.
on both ends of reasons you would have a state, there would be no reason. And if
So,
there's no reason and you're perfect, you're not going to do it.
so do you think that um, there is any lesser condition that the state doesn't need to form? Like, because the conception that I have of anarchism isn't so much of a utopia, but a role of social organization to where.
Mm-hmm. So, sort of,
Sorry, go on.
just going to try and see if I understand. It's not like utopia, like not everything's going to be perfect,
Mhm.
but you're thinking that system of the available systems we have,
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah, so there would still
Okay.
be crime, there would still be criminals, but the way that it would be dealt with wouldn't, um, aggression wouldn't be a permissible means to go about solving that. If A is robbing B, that doesn't give C the right to hold a gun to both of their heads and tell them to play nice.
I see. I would say that you don't need C to hold a gun to both. You need C to hold a gun to B's head if they isn't doing anything wrong.
Mhm.
And that would be justified, even, I presume, in your view, if someone's killing people and stealing, you could use force to stop them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's specifically the use of force against either people like for pre-crime or the use of force against innocent people or victims or the general category I would call her as non-aggressive people. Um, the state uses its monopoly on force to victimize everybody else in society.
Obviously, obviously, sometimes that's true, and that's going to be true in every single example of a state, right? Because states aren't perfect; they have evil people, evil systems, evil. There's corruption, right?
Hmm.
I think that it's because there's just some problems that come to my mind, other than even if, let's say, imagine, okay, everyone got rid of the state all at once, right? Which is going to happen, but part of the state all at once, and we went to sort of this anarchism view. What I think is going to happen is immediately every single area in the world is immediately you're going to meet new states. You're either going to have rich people hiring mercenaries
Hmm.
and enforcing their sort of enforcing safety over an area. That would be the location. You'll have like militias, like you have a small town and they'll elect a sheriff, and you have a militia that can help the sheriff if there's some bandit gang encroaching, and then you'll have gangs take over areas. I think that's immediately what's going to happen. Is how maybe this is more into the strategy, but how do you what would we have to do in order to stop that?
I would say a few things need to be true. I think the criticism for of that of anarchism, which I don't necessarily think that would be, but like if all states were to just suddenly be abolished and everybody were to continue behaving and thinking how they do, I call it a bit of like a slave morality. But people have a slave
Just
morality where they will not do anything unless they are forced to. Uh, and if they aren't forced to do anything, they're going to be crying out for somebody to force them to do something. So I think you would have a lot of people continue the narratives and continue the philosophy of statism and recreate it. So I agree with you on that.
I see what you're saying. You're saying that if we were that there needs to be that in the process of getting towards anarchism, there's going to be some sort of change in the morality of the people that's going to make it visible.
Yeah, specifically, um,
Is it
I think that the philosophy of people um, needs to change. And I say philosophy, but um, there's the philosophy that people have and think about, and then there are the narratives that they tell themselves. So people believe in the narrative that the United States was founded on like individual liberty, and we, the people of the United States, came together to form this government that enshrines and protects our rights, and in exchange of some of them, we give them the power to govern over us. Is that the sort of like, would you agree that that's the narrative of the United States?
to some people that's the narrative,
Yeah. What's the other narrative? The
right?
Freemasons fought the British and seceded.
Is that or you could say the narrative that the Europeans uh, conquered the land from the
True.
Danes and then brutally oppressed everyone. Like that's a you
Yeah.
hear all. I think that one's the most untrue, but it that's a narrative that you hear.
True.
Right? So different people have different sort of narratives.
Right.
This is if the sort of implicit question is what's my narrative,
Hmm.
it'd be something like there's a group of people who have good like a good cultural values, good like a sort of cultural technologies that have been developed thousands of years, basically stemming from Christianity. And Christianity obviously comes from Judaism,
Hmm.
stemming from Christianity, and that those when those mindsets are poured, especially mixed with the European Germanic culture, mixed, they do really good just everywhere in the whole world. You can see Germans just do as immigrants do fantastically well everywhere they've been. The English do fantastically well everywhere they've been compared to other other cultures, even cultures in the Middle East. Right, in the Middle East, at one time was extremely wealthy and successful,
Yeah.
but then I'd say Islam happened is a large part of the problem, and they got that good culture that was there in their golden age, and then it fell off a cliff. Right,
Hmm.
and so And so I would say that we had this good culture, and then we came over to the New World and succeeded, had a comparative advantage to everyone else in the New World,
Mhm.
and it and we were more moral, we were more moral then than we are now, and so that's why we're seeing all these problems and economic, and the government is doing more immoral things than it seems like they have in the past, like even just the debt and just spending money on everything and how no one can cut anything. I think that's a symptom of immorality of our society.
I get
I think
you.
no matter what way your society is organized, people are moral, it's going to be great, and if your people are immoral, it's going to go terrible, and that's really the main fact.
I get you. There's a few different categories of morality that I think about. There are the things you are obliged to do, things these obligations, these responsibilities. There are the things you're permitted to do, um, and then there are the things that you are forbidden from doing, or things that are impermissible, or that you're obliged not to do. You get what I mean with those?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Those are all the only three options.
Yeah. I think that people aren't necessarily obligated to enact the good. Like other people can't obligate one to enact the good. It's certainly good for you to enact the good, obviously, but you are permitted to engage in some sin, in some error from the good. But there's a line
Well,
in that sin.
I would say that you're permitted, as in the state should and other
Mhm.
people, because the state is sort of a outgrowth of the
Yeah,
people,
state's
even if
made
it's
of
oppressing
just
them.
people. Yeah, the state is just an organization
Yeah,
of people.
like it's because it's not like a physical object that
Right.
does things. It works through people and how people act, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd say it's not that everything that's evil is impermissible, right? But it's some things that are evil we shouldn't be enforcing because we're going to catch more good people than bad student counterproductive.
hmm
With
And
prudentially, it's unwise.
right. So there's a kind of sin that is so much in error from the good or so evil that it permits other people to stop you from doing it. So like if you're trying to murder
Yes.
someone, that like is past the line and it is so evil that it permits someone else to murder. Not someone else to murder, but someone else to use violence in self-defense up until and including lethal force. Yeah.
Yeah, which wouldn't be murder, that should be killing because murder
Right.
is
Yeah.
unjust.
Yeah, murder is the unjustified
Mm.
killing. Um, where do you think
So,
that line is in sin?
like, where do you think I could someone from doing something?
Yeah, like at what
Yeah.
point
Mm.
of actions or like what standard of action permits others to use violence to stop you from doing that?
Well, I'd say it depends on the. Obviously, it depends on. So, like murder, obviously, you could physically stop someone from doing that.
Yeah.
Stealing, you could stop. I would say you could stop someone from doing that. Even I sort of lean towards. I like Adam Smith. I think he's pretty smart. And what he sort of said was that the government should what they should do is they should protect person, property, and your promise. Which obviously meant like contract, right? Like
hmm
you have to pay your worker, you agree to pay your worker, and then you would be forced by the government to follow through with that.
Yeah.
And he also had a limited number of things that the this is a little bit different from what the government can use via force.
hmm
He said if there's a thing that an individual like private people won't do, but leads to a net benefit, like the amount of resources you put in is not equal to the amount of resources that come, then the government can do that. But he was like, this is really difficult to do. And oftentimes, if that's you use that and you say, oh, we're going to do this thing. This is more good than. I mean, that's not true. Oftentimes, that's the case. That's the sort of the limit, and I would pretty much agree with that for the highest level of government, the federal.
Hmm.
level of government should be and they should delegate that as they can towards the smaller municipalities, right? So the states, the cities,
Yeah.
smaller levels of government. And, and there's lots of things that the government doesn't need to do at all, I would say. Obviously, there's too much government now.
I'm glad we can at least agree
Why?
on that. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to introduce a
Does
bit
that
of a
make any
concept.
sense?
I think so. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
constrained view of government, which I respect. Sort of in like the classical liberal tradition, it sounds. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And I think the liberals in classical history focused a lot on individual liberty, and where I think they went wrong is there's a dude, Liquid Zulu, who I agree with on this. Where they went wrong is that they focused so much on the prosperity generated by these liberties, especially the economic ones, that they changed their focus to how we can distribute all of these prosperities and what we should do with that, which then undermined their care for the liberties themselves, which has led us to recession after recession, you could say. Um, the business cycle.
Recessions before, recessions are always going to happen because what a recession is just a correction in there's been misinvestment,
Yeah,
malinvestment, and it has to get corrected somehow.
yeah,
And I mean, it's pretty easy to tell we're in for a pretty big recession. I don't know when. It could be 20 years from now. I don't know
yeah.
how they would manage to push that off, but oh, I know. I'm not. I am not. I haven't gone to university for economics. I just listened to some podcasts and read some books. So
I recommend the Austrian school.
well,
um,
I've heard of that, and I'm pretty sure that's the school I'm a part of, even if I haven't read any book that's specific to that.
oh, nice.
Unless Thomas Sowell counts as an history.
I don't think he's exactly Austrian. Thomas Sowell like gets some of his
Mm-hmm.
ideas from it, but yeah, I don't think
Well, yeah,
exactly.
definitely not a Keynesian. So
Yeah,
Keynesian
the
economics
worst.
is man. It's like it's just spend money forever because it's in a
Yeah,
hard currency. Like okay, like you're right that you don't have to pay that back really at all. But how is that different from just default?
yeah.
And
It,
so if defaulting is not a good thing, then
it's a big old sham. Um, I wanted
oh
to
yeah.
I wanted to circle back to the one standard because I think
Mhm.
libertarian. I think the most important necessity, the most important narrative that the state has on convincing people that it is necessary is that it needs to have the monopoly on law creation, arbitration, and enforcement. There's no other entity that claims this monopoly, and in most societies, without the state um, creating this standard, there would be no standard. Would you say that's like a important narrative of the state, an important monopoly of the state?
Is it about the state and
Sorry, what was
calling
that?
me? I got this. I got someone calling me.
Oh, okay, okay.
Sec. Okay. Okay, that's good. Without the state, there would be no uh, sort of. Say that again. I sort of got distracted.
It's three monopolies which the state controls. Law creation,
Mhm.
so they come up with the standard for what justifies the use of violence to oppose. Arbitration, they apply that law to specific instances, and then they decide who's in the right, who's in the wrong. And then enforcement. They have an enforcement mechanism, whether it's cops, whether it's military, whether it's the intelligence agencies, to enforce the law and enact violence upon people.
At least definitely the force and arbitration. I would
Hmm.
say with the making of laws on the granular level, laws. But on the abstract level, I would say that you've got religious organizations influence that, and there's a lot more. It's a little bit less of a monopoly than the others.
Hmm. So, like, the philosophy for why they decide what laws they do
Mm-hmm.
certainly influences their behavior. But I think
Yes.
the state is the entity where what they say goes for the society. Yeah.
Yeah. In the end, not in the creation process, but once they're the ones who fully enact the rules
Yeah.
and make them stay in power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, those are definitely the three monopolies. In addition to whatever other monopolies that
Hmm.
they give themselves, which I think those three monopolies are good, and I think any other monopoly is bad.
Right. Well, I would
So
dispute the first, and I think that's kind of what the ethics conversation is about. Because in the libertarian tradition, in like Rothbard primarily, continuing on to Hoppe, Walter Block, and the rest, and into Liquid Zulu. If you don't know who he is, he's a Scottish, I think, libertarian. He's got a crazy ginger afro. Um, they
that's
have
funny.
been chasing natural law. So there's like
Yes,
the religious connotation of natural law, but libertarian natural law um, is not rooted in religious premises necessarily. It kind of depends on how you dig it down.
well, I would say I
Mhm.
don't know how you can like in the end, like you could say, oh, this is what we probably should be doing. This will be what leads us to a most successful society by these metrics. You can figure that out,
Mhm.
but I think that in the end, you need to have some sort of religious underlying. You need something to rest natural law on, because if everything was just evolution without any guidance or power, then what? Like, who cares how we're developed and how we perceive and what's good for us, and what you can pull from nature isn't anything because nature doesn't speak it without religion.
Well, let's say
I do like natural law a lot.
okay, that's good. W- Would you ground truth in God?
It depends what you mean by truth, because even without God, there's going to be some things that are true, right? That exist.
Mhm.
At least something exists, right? That's true,
Mhm.
regardless of if there's a God. But
You could say existence
when it comes to
exists.
questions, yeah. But when it comes to questions of like morality and what's right and wrong, I'd say without God, they don't exist.
Okay, that's interesting. Um, that's, I think, something that we can get into. This might be cut
I'd
short,
love
but
to
of
get into it.
course, we could pick it up another time.
I'll keep going for a little bit. As
Sure
long
thing.
as you were going into that topic, I will last.
Sounds good.
I would delay, or I would delay the supper.
Oh, well, I'll try to keep it concise, but we'll see if that we might have some stumbling blocks here. There's a few things to go over. So we covered like the permissible, obligatory, forbiddenness. There's also one other idea that it relies on, and it relies on the idea that ought or obligation implies can. That
Mm-hmm.
an obligation for something to occur implies that that something can occur. Do you agree with that idea?
If, if I am obligated to give some food if they're starving to death, which may be true, only obligated to give them food if I actually have any food.
Yes. So like
If I don't have any food, what am I going to do?
yeah, you can never be obligated to draw a square circle because that's a contradiction. It can't happen. You literally can't do it. So that yeah,
I'm unable to do that.
yeah. Um,
Well, that makes sense.
the idea that I have is, and this is
Okay.
kind of a particular idea of aggression, but libertarian legal theory kind of comes down to how precisely you can define aggression such that everything else sort of flows or comes as a conclusion. Um, and the idea that I have for aggression is and we can get into like the specific language, but it is a aggression is a use contrary to the occurring non-aggressive use of property. Um, and you'll notice there's like a little bit of like recursion there. So
I wish I
we'll
had
go to
that
the
written.
base. Sorry, go
I wish I had that written down.
on. Let me I'll type it in the chat for you. See if I can. Oh,
You could just say it again. I just needed to.
sure. Aggression is the contrary use of a uh, contrary use of a non-aggressive use of a resource. Saying this off the top of my head, sorry. Um,
So it's related. So it depends on aggressive use. So use just like the opposite of that. Relate to
yes.
that
So it
use.
is. So it is not that. So I'll draw it back to the base case. So the base case is if
Well, then
nobody else
what's
is.
a,
Sorry, go on.
I guess you keep going.
Okay.
After this, or,
So the base case of the definition is if no one else is using the resource. So if no one else is using the resource, if it's a wild resource, if no one has touched it, if no one has picked it up and used it to stoke like say it's a stick, no one's picked it up to use it to stoke a fire. Say it's a rock, no one has put it into their house or something like that. If it is a completely wild
Mhm.
resource that no one is using, then you implementing it towards some use, you picking it up to stoke your fire, if it's a stick, or walking with it,
Mhm.
or smacking a tree with it, or something like that, you are
Mhm.
starting to use that. It is not contrary to any occurring ethical use because, or non-aggressive use, because there was no prior um, use of it at all. Um, that would
You're not
constitute
keeping someone else.
homesteading. Sorry, go on.
To stop. You're not keeping someone else who is actively using it from using it.
Yeah. So the
Something like that.
Yeah. So like no one else was previously using it. You're the first to use it. This is called homesteading. There's like the idea in like John Locke of mixing your labor with the resource. I have a bit of a different definition when it comes to use, but that's a sort of like romantic interpretation of it. Um, but if we need to get into the ontology of what a use is, we can. Um, but what do you think of that idea of aggression? Because um,
So aggression is anything that's just that isn't not aggressive aggression. That's
um,
what it sounds like to me, which would be correct, but I don't know how that's very useful.
yeah. Specifically, aggression is the um, contrary use to a non-aggressive use. So it is. I'll expand out
So,
into
so for
another.
if someone's using something aggressively, and then you try to use it, and they can go off
Yeah.
to use.
It's like
Okay, then
if you're trying to exclude the current user, the current non-aggressive user of the resource, then you are aggressing. So if I picked up a stick and started to stoke my fire with it, and then you wanted to take the stick and go throw it at a bird or something, um, you would be excluding my use of it in order to do something else, and that would be aggression. But if I were to hand you the stick, you aren't excluding my use to it. My use of it is to pass it to you. Um, so that so if I were to hand you it, if you
bird.
had my consent to use the stick, then it wouldn't be aggressive. Similarly, if I were to take this sharp stick and I were to try to stab you with it, I am trying to use the stick contrary to your use of your body. So I am aggressively using the stick, and it would not be aggression for you to use the stick or me contrary to my desires or my ends. You get what I mean?
What's the different? What are the different? Yeah, I understand what you're saying here. I guess how can you I can't say this word for some reason. Differentiate. There we go. Between like me trying to murder you and me stealing a cookie from your cookie jar. Like isn't the same response? Shouldn't the same like how do you justify having different responses to those two different?
How do you mean? Like, so
Like
say
why
like you're,
shouldn't
sorry, go on.
why shouldn't I leap to why shouldn't I leap to lethal force when you steal a cookie from my cookie jar?
Okay. So this, I think that kind of gets into some libertarian justice theory, and I will say I think libertarian justice theory is incomplete, much more than natural law itself. But I would suggest, I think, and this is speculation, something like a principle of least force is going to pop out of the theory, or is going to flow from the theory, to where, um,
Always steal if I steal a cookie from you, you have no idea I don't have a gun in my back pocket. So if you're going to try and stop me, you're going to have to use force of a gun because you have no idea. Even if I'm like a 4-year-old, you have no idea.
I think,
Obviously, that's a little bit dumb, but I'm trying to
I would
I'm
say
trying to get to a point.
all aggressions can escalate to justifying lethal force. So it could be the
Oh,
smallest
of course.
aggression, but it would justify the victim escalating to lethal force in order to reinstitute their use of the resource.
Like if more limited uses of force is not effective, then more closer to lethal force is becomes more and more allowed.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would say that I'm hard. I gotta. I don't have the right words to say what I'm trying to say. It seems to me that there are certain things that are less of a problem. Steal a cookie out of your cookie jar. I would say that it would never be okay for me to use lethal force against someone doing that. If in the process of using less than lethal force, they start using force against me back
hmm
in such a way that I'm now afraid for my life, then I could use lethal. But that's not because of them stealing the cookie from the cookie jar. That's because I'm scared. I'm afraid for my life. But even if they steal the cookie and run away, and the only way to stop them and get the cookie back is to shoot them before they can get away too far. Let's say I couldn't shoot them because the cookie's not that valuable. But it seems to me that under that system that you were saying, that you could shoot them because that's the only way to get your resource.
I think in that circumstance, if I'm not mistaken on theory, you are permitted to use the least force necessary to um, reestablish your use. I think in the situation of
Well,
somebody
it's a
running away, you are
mm,
at liability to cause damages to them because the standard is objective. I would suggest the standard for what is and is not permissible is objective, and you wouldn't say they get away, you would still be within your right to, at a later time, seek remediation for the damages caused. You could
I agree
get.
with that. But let's say that we're in the West, right? And we're going to escape and I'll never see him again.
Mhm,
Like they're a shoplifter, right? The vast majority of shoplifters never get caught,
mhm.
right? And so you will never get remediation. Even if you figure out who did it, the chance you'll get remediation is basically zero too. And so if you're like, oh, the only way I can the shoplifter from getting away with that of Oreos is to take the gun out and shoot them in the back because they're running away and they're too slow. I can't catch them. Would that be permissible?
To my knowledge, yes.
Yeah, that just doesn't seem reasonable. Like when you, I could try and make an actual argument against that, just
Mhm.
from how it seems to me. Like if they're stealing food from me and that's food I need to feed my children, like my children will starve, I'm getting starved to that. Then then I would say you could shoot them to get that food back, right? Because they're more than just stealing something from you. They're going to it's directly going
But
to
that
harm
sounds
me
more
in
like a
a
difference in
major way.
degree than a difference in kind.
I agree. I'm saying that that's what I'm saying. In I'm saying that force could be justified only when it's at a high degree. What I think you're saying is that if I'm never going to be able to get something, even if it's something really about resorting to lethal force, then I can resort to lethal force, and I think that wouldn't be okay. Right? Would you say that you could resort if they're stealing a cookie and they're running away and you'll never catch them and get that cookie back without shooting them right now? Could you shoot them?
I think that is included, but I when it comes to principle of least force, I do think it might be an obligation on the victim to coerce the person before using the force. So they have to shout out or communicate in some form that the person needs to stop, drop it,
Sure.
anything else, or else they're going to shoot.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So I'm just trying to get to the actual. I agree with you there. I'm just trying to get to the actual sort of, and if all other available use have been explored and have failed, and your only way that you're ever going to get your cookie, which is obviously a cookie, is it's a pretty minor thing to happen.
Right.
You don't have it. It's not like he's stolen $1 million and that was my retirement and now I'm going to starve to death in the street, right?
Hmm.
Those are two totally different situations. But I think that under this sort of morality that you're proposing, I think that it's impossible to actually distinguish them from each other. And so I think that lethal force would be available in situations where I think that is not reasonable.
Why do you think? What standard are you using to judge that it's not reasonable?
Well, I would say you want to use it's proportional to what they're going to do to you. So if they're gonna if someone steals food from me, I would say unless it's the same. So if someone steals food from me and that's going to cause me to starve to death, then I could use lethal force. And then if someone steals something from me and it's not going to cause me or anyone else to die or to have even really unfortunate to have my quality of life greatly harmed, if it's not going to cause that, then I say you could use some level of force, escalate such to the point that I'm actually in trouble now, like I'm going to get hurt, and so I have to use lethal force to not get hurt. Then I would say that's okay to use lethal force then. As long as they're just running away, I think that you have to use proportional to the can't take their life. What they're doing isn't taking, even though they're aggressing against me.
If I want to try to steelman your argument, um, in order to better understand you and correct me if I'm wrong. But the use of lethal force for any aggression imply, or like the potential of escalation towards lethal force against any aggression implies that even the smallest, most insignificant aggression can escalate to lethal force. And that amount of harm that you are causing to that other person is disproportionate to the harm of the insignificant aggression. Yeah?
Just to make sure, maybe you already were thinking of this, but just to make sure, like I try to stop them with force, and then they try and fight me, and we're rolling
Right, yeah.
around like, and I have a gun. Like obviously, even if they don't have a gun, they have my gun potentially, and
Hmm.
so then lethal force would then be, I think, morally acceptable.
So say
And if you
particularly
can
while they're
end up
fleeing.
using that, that's particularly while they're fleeing, because then you're not worried about any force them hurting you. The only way that you're going is the thing that they initially did.
Hmm.
And I don't think that stealing a cookie or some other similarly insignificant thing warrants killing them. Now, maybe if you're really poor and that cookie's your only food, then that would be significant. So depends on your situation. But
Hmm.
for me personally, if someone were to steal a cookie from me, I'm not going to starve to death, right? I live in a modern Western country. No one starves to death
Right.
unless they're like a young child or uh, like mentally unwell or addicted to drugs, right? Like those people freeze to death sometimes, but nobody dies, starves.
Yeah. So,
So yeah, if someone steals a cookie, I'm not worried about it. It is, yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm too much.
would you say that the person uh has an obligation to not shoot the person running away with the cookie? Or would you say that they're forbidden from shooting the person running away with their cookie?
Maybe if it was the stage, I would say I wouldn't want to legally stop people from doing that. I would. I'd say definitely morally
Mhm. It's not good.
in this sort of in this situation that we're imagining that's perfect. Right? This situation in real life is going to be much more confusing than that. But in this situation, that's where it's very clear. Then no, it would not be okay. It would
I would
that make
certainly
sense?
agree that it's not virtuous. It's not a virtuous thing to do to
Mm-hmm.
shoot a person for stealing your cookie and running away with
On
it.
my defense, yeah. I think it's just not good. I think it would be actually evil.
You think it would be? Do you think it would cross the line to where they shouldn't be permitted to do it?
As I said, I don't know if it's that clear. I would say yes, that the state should be like you can't do that. The problem is that we take that way too far, and so we try and put people like where Daniel Penny or Derek Chauvin, he actually went to prison. We try and put them in prison when clearly they shouldn't be in prison. So I would say, okay, we need like this should be like minimal gray area situation. But when it comes to the actual morality of it, like outside of the state enforcement of morality, then because the state doesn't create morality. If it created morality, like who cares, right? It's all a power game.
I do think it creates moral
But
claims. It certainly makes moral claims, though, because with every
well,
law,
well,
they're
sure, yeah.
justifying the use of violence.
Well, obviously, it creates moral claims, and you. I would say it creates moral claims that are incorrect, and it creates moral claims that are correct. Like murder is wrong, and then it also says like abortion's okay, and even which is obviously I would say contradictory, but the government makes moral claims, but it doesn't create morality. There must be for it to make sense at all, not to just like shoplift because you can get away with shoplifting almost entirely, or to kill one person when you're sure that you're never going to get caught, like you push them off a cliff while you're hiking, or
Hmm.
something.
I get you.
Like something like that, where you're never going to get caught. Why wouldn't you do that? Government's creating the morality. It's the morality has to be outside the government for me to make. Maybe I would still not kill people. I know that for certain. If I thought that there was no morality, would not be like killing people and stealing. But I'd say objectively, the reason I'm not killing people with stealing is just for no reason, just because it makes me feel better,
I think I
right?
get you.
Just because I feel that I was stealing, even though there's no objective basis for that. And so the government doesn't create morality. If it did, it doesn't matter.
I would suggest that there exists an objective morality, but I again want to talk about these categories that we've talked about before. I think everything
Okay.
permissible is that which is non-aggressive. And then within the behaviors of non-aggression, those non-aggressive behaviors, there is the set of behaviors that are the good. But I don't think there can be a virtuous aggression. I don't think that there is anything good that is non-aggressive. And I think non-aggression.
That's aggressive.
Say again.
You said you said I don't think there's anything good that's in that,
I don't think that there's anything
which is
good that's aggressive.
yes, exactly. Okay. And yeah, I would agree. There's good uses of force, but there's no good use of aggression.
Hmm.
But the thing is that I would say that there's a lot. I would say every sin is aggressive against someone, against yourself at least, and most of the time against people as well. I just say that if something's not bad enough, the state shouldn't be enforcing it because they'll screw up a lot and use it to do bad stuff. You get more bad for things that are hard to tell or for minor sins.
Hmm.
I'd say every single, because the definition of a sin is like a crime against, in the end, is it's an infinite crime. Everything's an infinite. But even if it's just, you're just not even looking at what you're saying, ignoring that part of the crime, it always hurts you or hurts you and someone.
Hmm.
And so it's always aggression. And so if you had a perfect state, like we had God in charge of the state, and he was the judge for everything, then he could, I would say that we could have a lot of laws against things, right?
If God were in charge
Like
of the
Jesus
state,
came
sorry.
down. If he was running it, if he was the judge, right, and he made the decisions, he was the one who put people in prison. I would say we could have a lot more uh, laws against harder to get crimes because he would know whether or not the person actually broke the law and what the appropriate punishment would be.
Hmm.
The problem is that we don't know that because we're not perfect. And so we have to limit our ability to enforce morality, what is reasonably practical, and will generate basically prudential. What's going to be the most effective way to enforce the laws? Which parts of morality should we be enforcing? Which parts should we leave up to the person to deal with based on what's going to be most effective for society?
Well,
Does that make any sense?
I think the general category of sin is that um, I wouldn't say that all sin is aggressive. I do think there is non-aggressive sin because I think etymologically, sin comes from the idea of error in archery. So if you get a bullseye, that's the good, and then anything
Mm-hmm.
outside of the bullseye is some amount of error, some amount of sin. Um,
Yes.
so it's like the good is the perfect set of actions that you could do in any given moment. And then everything is from that is like some amount of sin. It's not that you're like evil for sinning. You could still be trying your best and you just don't, you're not omniscient, so you don't
Well,
know
okay,
the
so
exact thing
there's
to do.
different types. There's
Right.
yeah, okay. But if you mean sin as in just like you don't do the maximally best thing that you could be doing at any given time, anything that's the maximally best thing to do is a sin, then obviously there's going to be non-aggressive sins. But I'm
Hmm.
talking about when you have the three components, voluntary, you know it's wrong, and it is actually a wrong thing to do.
Hmm.
Like if you're not sure between two different actions, which one's going to be better, and you pick one of them, and that one was the action. Maybe that's physically sin, but it wouldn't be morally a sin in
Hmm.
such a way that want to. I would say it's aggression.
To where it's like,
I think aggression requires.
sorry, go on.
I think aggression requires you to do it on purpose.
Well, I think you can
I can't be aggressive.
accidentally aggress. I don't think you would have like if we're talking
You
like
could.
legal theory, there's like
Mm-hmm.
mens rea and actus rea. Mens rea is like guilty mind, actus rea is guilty action. Um, you can
Mm-hmm.
have actus rea,
Exactly.
like you can accidentally like throw a baseball through like a lady's window. You could accidentally run
Yes.
someone's dog over, run someone over. But
Mm-hmm.
be, you wouldn't have like that guilty mind
Maybe
of
we
like
would
intentionally
legally
having
deal
done
with
that.
that. Yes. No, I'm because we're using these words to mean different things, and like sin can mean a few different things depending on what you mean, right? And
Right.
so what I'm saying is I think that it's and of course many times if you run someone's dog over, maybe you are somewhat at fault for paying attention, but you're definitely not as at fault as if you just deliberately try to run that seating,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so but so you're right that there's sort of aggressive, objectively aggressive actions that you might perform. But I don't think that you would be immoral for performing objectively aggressive acts if you didn't intend.
Mhm.
But if you intend to do uh, intentionally do something wrong that you know is wrong, I would say that is always going to be aggressive.
Hmm. I think
The
it depends on
definition.
what you mean by wrong. Because okay,
Mm-hmm.
we'll take this to an area. I do not think that drug use is aggressive. I do not think you can aggress upon yourself.
No, I would say that, yeah, drug use is aggressive. You're hurting yourself, your future, your body for temporary, momentarily, right now, sort of things, and it's obvious, and we can do something about it, and it would be beneficial, right? It's certain things that you'd say, like arguing with, like fighting with your wife, or being a little bit mean to your kids. As a government, it'd be basically impossible to try and force people to not do stuff like that. But when it comes to drugs, we actually have the ability to do something, and it is, say, aggressive against yourself, even if it's not aggressive against anyone else. So that's, drug abuse is actually aggressive against other people because you're out of your mind, and so there's the potential. Everyone's, you walk past someone who's like clearly out of it, you're like, maybe they're like nice when they're not out of it, but like, oh, I know this person could just like randomly, and maybe that's an incorrect. But you hear stories about that happening too. Sometimes I would say it's, I would say that drug use would be at least against yourself.
We'll take the
Right?
against yourself thing, because like I would say increasing your potential for aggression against other people isn't aggression
Mm-hmm.
itself. Um, but like you
Sure.
increase your liability of it occurring, kind of. It's like a
Yeah.
hazard or a risk of aggression. Um, but I would say, in terms of even doing harm to yourself, so we'll bring it a bit back from drugs because that can be like a little bit like gray area. I don't think self-harm is itself aggression because I think
Mm-hmm.
basically taking any kind of drug is a form of self-harm. Um, but like in terms of uh, we'll say violent acts against your own body is not aggression. It certainly
Mm-hmm.
causes you harm. It's certainly not good for you. It's certainly a sin,
Yes.
but it is not contrary to your non-aggressive use of your, or like to, we'll say even like use of your
I would say
body.
this. I
I,
would say this. If
I don't.
you harm yourself, like if you cut your leg, all of a sudden you can't use your leg anymore. Now maybe you could say, oh, I consented to getting my leg cut. But the thing is that there are times when we say, yeah, you can't consent to doing that. Like you can't, like I'm gonna drink and then drive, right? That's a thing I'm doing with my body, making decisions for my property, and we would say, no, that's illegal. You can't do that. I think that's reasonable to say you can't because it's really dangerous. One, against other people, but it's even because it's dangerous to yourself, right? Like you're gonna get killed.
Well, you can drink and drive, but you just can't drive on the public roads. You can do it on your own property.
Yeah, you could drive in your you can drive in your farm.
Yeah. Um, I
And I
think,
would say that that's not point. It's just like the government shouldn't be enforcing stuff like that. I'd still say it would be just be.
but
You're
what
on
I
a
would
public
say
road.
is,
Only people who are going to be on your property are people you and
yeah.
they clearly know you're drinking, so that's the risk that they're going to take. You're going to take.
But what I
But
would
even with
suggest
something that's
is
even less
that
serious,
you can't use a resource contrary to yourself. You're only one. You're
I
one
think there's
mind,
a,
one will.
yeah, you're one mind, and so there's, so you're going to say something like, if I'm getting this right, it's like, so in that previous example, you have the stick and you give it to your friend, and now whatever they do with it, that's not aggressive, because it's not contrary to what they want to, like what you wanted to do with it, because what you wanted to do with it was give it to them so they can do what they want with
Yeah.
it. So with
Their
your own body,
possession of
it's
the
like,
stick wasn't aggressive.
yeah, yeah. So with your own body, it's like, well, I'm in. You could say somewhat like I am in possession of my own body. I would say that's not true. Actually, you're not in possession. You're steward. You're a steward, but
I would say you own yourself.
like I possess a car. But let's say that you do own yourself. I think so. You own yourself. It's your body, you own it, and so you can do whatever you want with it. But I think that that's just not true. That's not reasonable. I think you have an obligation to not
Why do you think that's
hurt
not
yourself. To
reasonable?
do. Say that again.
Why do you think that's not reasonable?
I say probably because I guess we said like for the it's hard to separate out when you say hypothetically. Let's say you do own your body, because I think that you don't. That you actually have an obligation to take care of it and to use it in such a way that you're like not deliberately destroy your body for no gain. Right? Like if you're a soldier and you push past your broken leg to save your friend,
Sure.
it's different than you deliberately break your leg. Right? Those are two different things. There's a greater good that you're going to achieve through that physical evil, and so it's not a moral evil.
Well, we could
But if there's no
address
greater,
that. So why would you contend that man does not own himself? You're talking about this like obligation. You're talking about the stewardship. Um, is man a self-owner or is he
well,
a steward?
it's you don't. Yeah, okay. So I say you don't own. I'm trying to. I wasn't going to go directly to religion. How would I? Or I think I just have to go directly to religion. It's only. It helps that religion just makes sense. So that means that this is a valid argument. But I would say that, at least to me, that God, He created us, and so even if you read the Bible, you read the story of the talents, where He gives the three people, He gives one of them 10 talents. The king goes off, He gives three people talents, which is a huge sum of money. So He gives one person 10 talents, another person 7.
hmm
And then when He comes back, the first two have doubled their talents, right? Like He gave them something and they produced good fruit with it. The third one just buried it in a pit, and he goes and gets it and brings it back. And so the king's mad at him because he's like, you didn't even try to do anything good with it. Like you were obligated. You were given these gifts. You were obligated to do something good with it. And so I'd say that's the
What is the consequence for the man who
main.
did nothing with them?
I don't know exactly what it is. It's probably something like thrown into like the fiery fire, just state of gang, or outside where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, something like that. Or darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. I'm
Because
gonna I'm gonna put my guess on that.
because what I would suggest is again that it's not good, but um, we humans have a will, and we not in a way that can break the laws of physics or anything, but we are free to express that will as we so please, um,
Yeah,
constrained
there's
only
free
by
will,
physics. Yeah.
and there are two, like if you have two options and either of them are morally wrong, you can take either option. But I think there's lots of things we do that are self harming. Sin in the end is self harming, say.
hmm
But I think that the government shouldn't be like if I yell at my brother or my younger sibling, and like I'm not yelling at them like get your hand off the stove or get out of the road or something, like something where I like really need to urgently get across that they need to stop doing something stupid. Then I would say that's harmful to myself, but I think that that's too small. It's too hard to. It's unreasonable for the government to enforce something like that. But when it comes to a much bigger, more obvious form of self harm, like drug abuse or uh, like cutting yourself or deliberately trying to cut parts of your body off, or like, oh, I should cut this hand. I want you to cut this hand off, or in the end, assisted suicide. Like I don't even live anymore. Kill me. I think that isn't. That's obvious enough that the government can actually do something about it productively.
Well, you could say obvious, but I think I challenge in the moral standard that you have to do this because I would suggest that any expression of will is your use of yourself. You needed to use your brain, your like mind needed to use your brain, um, and you needed to use your body in order to express your will. And that is you exercising use over yourself. Even through inaction, you are
Right.
using your body. And I
Yeah,
think
you're
that,
exercising your use of yourself. That's true.
and if you aren't the owner, then that use of your body um, can be or is then impermissible. You have this.
But it
Uh,
would be impermissible if you've been allowed to use your. But if you've only been allowed to use your body in such a way that it doesn't hurt your body, like if I loan someone a car, I say you can drive my car around for a little bit, and they come back and they deliberately totaled it. Well, that wasn't what I when I said they could use my car. I didn't mean that they could just do whatever they want. I meant they could use it for its purpose.
yeah, I think
You could use it for what it's supposed to be used for. You can't deliberately destroy it.
so. So would you suggest
That
that
makes
the
sense.
owner of the body is God or something else?
To be God, like what else could it be? If it's not God, then we do own it. So
Okay, if it's not God, we do own our bodies. You wouldn't suggest that um, a man could own another man.
no,
Okay,
that's because awesome, and we're not.
yeah,
So
a sort of
and
slavery
also he
ethic.
he, he made us. I could say slavery ethic, but it's we're not we're not slaves. It's just that it's well, the word ownership isn't like the right word. I don't think, but
Yeah.
you could say yeah, owns us, and the reason he can do that and we can't is because he actually is responsible. He's in charge of everything. He owns everything. But in order to create greater goods, he lets us make mistakes and to do do evil things. And like if I was like, okay, I'm gonna give you my car for a little bit, and then I know that there's like a 50-50 shot that you're gonna total it, that the result of you not totaling it is like the best thing ever, then I might still let you use my car. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I would say we don't own ourselves. We don't own our own. I don't even think we act like we own our own.
So, so,
Like
s-
sometimes people try
s-
to, but it people who act like they don't own their own bodies are always. If you look at Mother Teresa, like what she's dedicated her life to helping other people, to doing what she thinks God wants her to do,
mm.
and she's probably way higher than the vast majority of people, despite her material conditions.
So
She's
say
dead
we
now, but
take
she
this
was way
back to the
happier.
idea of like what permits violence. So that if something is forbidden, then other people can use violence to forbid you from doing it. If something is obligatory, other people could use violence to oblige you to do that.
Make you
Uh,
do it
if
if
you,
it's
sorry,
prudential. I would say the result's going to be more good than bad on the whole. Then yeah,
what do you
like
mean the
if there's
results are going to be
something that's
more good than bad?
forbidden, so if there's something that's forbidden, like if I'm morally forbidden to do something, then but then if I try to get the government to stop people from doing that, there would be more negative consequences than good consequences. Then the government shouldn't be doing it.
What standard are you using
That's for many
to
things.
describe these consequences? You say there's more negative consequences than positive consequences. What standard are you using to describe these consequences?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that very much, so I need to think about that.
I get you.
Like the exact standards that I use, but like just sort of there are like I mean the ultimate law is to love God with all your heart and like that's all, right? Like that, everything can boil down to that. And so if performing certain actions is not conducive, it deliberately harms that, then it's not permitted. And if some action is deliberately required, is definitively required by a rule, then you ought to do it. And but then government acting can sometimes lead to, even if they're trying to something that's actually bad or get people to do something that's actually good, it can lead to more of a harm of the good than what it was, than how much harm was being done before. And obviously that happens frequently because you get more government involvement in that. I mean, more government involvement thing, and then you lose that sort of, you lose both economic prosperity and sort of the culture and spirit that you need in order to have in the first place. And it's hard to regain that. It
Yeah.
took us whatever 100,000 years to get there first place.
Yeah. Uh, I'm stewing on a question.
I don't know. Hopefully I'm not being really confusing. It doesn't make any sense.
You're good.
So,
Do you think that another individual has, like, say we go with the idea, and I won't really like challenge you to justify the existence of God because I don't think that's a uh, fruitful conversation to be having here.
it's outside the bounds.
Yeah.
I would love to do that, but maybe
Maybe
some other
another time.
time.
Yeah, maybe another time. Um, but say, uh, taking, assuming your argument, idea of like God is our owner, even within that framework, does
I'm
another
getting up
man have a
focused or
right?
something. So
Say again.
I spoke over you.
Okay. Does like God himself would then have the right to use violence to oblige us from oblige us of our obligations. He has the right to use violence to forbid us from that which is forbidden. Um, but do other people have that right? How do other individuals have that right?
If other individuals, okay, so that's a really interesting question. I
Because
guess I would say that if you would only have the right to try and enforce the rules if God has given you the right. And of course, it's hard to tell. God, most of the time, doesn't come down to earth and speak with us. He did on especially on a particular occasion, I would say, like 2,000 years ago.
mhm,
But it's like which government is the rightful government? Who should I listen to? Especially if you're in some sort of disputed area where you're like, oh, Russia's here and then Ukraine's here, and oh, Russia's here, Ukraine. And we were originally a different place before then, but before the Soviet Union, somewhere like a different country.
mhm.
And so, how do you know who has the right to enforce the laws? Uh, that's a good question. I don't know. It's that's a hard to answer question. I would just say that we have to do our best. I think the only solution is because we're going to fail because we're not perfect, and so that's why we have all these doing evil things. It's because we're not perfect. I think it's just you try and make the best judgment, and hopefully your leaders are asking God for help, and the more and you just have to sort of. I think the most important thing is building morality on your local scale, getting your children to be moral, getting your friends to be moral, getting your family and sort of organizations you're a part of to become more moral. And if you do that, and then all the people you influence do that, and does that, then you would have a good government. And then if something screws up and someone's doing bad stuff, and then that propagates through it, you can have a terrible government. And so that's just the.
I think I gotta butt in and be a
I don't think that
contrarian
there's
here. I mentioned
okay.
before there's no virtuous aggression. I would say in a very similar way there's no good government because government necessitates aggression through its its aggressive uh, it enforces its monopolies through aggression. It relies on taxation. Uh,
I'd say it'd be force. It doesn't necessarily have to be aggression,
well, I would say
right?
the state prevents competitors to its law aggressively. So say the state has, um,
I would say no. You could say I just this is terror. Um, and what you said is true, where an aggressive thing is the is someone else is using a resource, and then you come and you take their permission. Well, the government is in charge, and so if another government were to show up, well, wouldn't they be the only ones aggressing? They're aggressing against the government, not the other way around, because the government's using it
Oh, no, no, I
because
mean,
they have a rightful.
I mean in terms of the use of the people's resources and people organizing to form parallel structures.
Okay,
So
I
say
see. Yeah.
say just like the raw
Different sort of
milk
thing.
regulations. The feds
Again?
raid the raw milk regulations. The feds raid
Oh yeah.
a
Okay.
farmer's market for raw milk, draw guns and everything in order to dump it down the sink because, oh, the FDA said this is not for human consumption. You're selling this, therefore we're going to use violence on you to destroy your property.
Well, I would say if they were right that it was like I'd say that's one of the times when the government's overreaching is that we were wrong raw milk regulations. But if raw milk really was as dangerous as they seem to, then I would say that that wouldn't be an aggressive. That wouldn't be aggressive. That would just be an appropriate use of force.
Would
If
it
it's
not
going to
be
get a lot
aggressive?
of people really sick, if it's appropriate, if they're right that it's harming people,
Well, are they
and it's just such
using
a
the
harming
resources
people
contrary to the
as drugs,
occurring use?
right? But I would say that if it's drinking, if I don't believe this, I think raw milk's fine to drink. Drinking raw milk was as bad as like taking drugs, then I would say it would be aggressive to stop drinking raw milk.
But
It would
currently
just
they're
it would
just
be a use of
possessing it.
force.
Currently they're just possessing it, and then they would just be selling it. Are those actions themselves, possessing it and selling it, are those actions aggressive?
Well, if the purpose, I'm talking about this as if raw milk is drug. So I think that the raw milk regulations are stupid. You should be able to drink raw milk.
Yeah.
But but if it's like as bad, if it gets you really high, it's as bad as drugs, right? Like heroin, then the producing it and selling it is contributing towards eventually someone taking it. You think that the person you're selling to is just gonna like wash it down the toilet just because they feel like you know why someone buys it, it's to drink it, right? And the reason someone buys drugs is to take drugs. And if the action of drinking raw milk is aggressive, which I don't think it is, but if it was, then you could use force to stop people from participating and contributing towards that aggressive.
Say it even was. I'm not willing to concede this in the general case, but say that drinking raw milk was aggressive of the person onto themselves, which again I contest. Um,
That's fine.
would does that mean that that possessing it or trading it to someone is aggressive?
Uh, it depends the reason you're possessing. Because if you're possessing it so that you can turn it into
Just like
processed milk,
holding on to it, you have
then
it on your
no.
person.
Yeah, but we can ask what the purpose of it, and maybe we should say the government shouldn't be dealing with this because in the case of raw milk, there are actual good uses for it. Whereas in the case of heroin, if you have heroin on your person, especially in the forms that people normally take it as drugs, you know only one thing that's used for. Whereas raw milk, you could say. But then if you have just like a 2 liter like a 1 liter bottle of raw milk, we would know what you're using it for as well because you don't transport raw milk to be processed in 1 liter bottles. You transport it in big containers.
Say a person
And
had every
so,
intention of drinking the raw milk. They have it on their person. They like
mm,
have it in their hand. The cap's undone. They have it have it in their
yeah,
hand. Is that an
there's
aggressive use
halfway
of
up to their milk
resources?
too. Well, I don't think it's aggressive because raw milk isn't aggressive. If raw
Well,
milk was
say
drinking raw
drugs.
milk
Say
was aggressive.
drugs. Possession of drugs.
Yeah, drugs.
They got the crack pipe in their
Then
hand.
we don't have to. It's not, they're ready. They're halfway there.
Yeah.
And then the government comes and obviously that's
No,
because
no, no.
it's harming
Just
someone else from using aggression.
just they have their crack pipe in their hand. They have every intention of using it. Have they committed aggression?
I would say, I guess I see what you're saying. You're saying they committed aggression yet, but I think it's not. then I guess I would have to say that you could use aggression to stop clearly obvious aggression. Like someone's about to rob a bank, they have their gun ready, they're about to kick the door in. Could you stop them from doing that, from even kicking the door in? I'd say, yeah, you can, because you know what they're going to do with certainty. When you're not certain, I think we should be extremely lenient in those cases, because oftentimes we can get the wrong people, get innocent people in the legal. Oh, you were about to drink raw milk from your, or you were carrying this drug that's normally a dangerous drug, but very infrequently it's like a medicinal drug, and you have a medicinal drug. Like it's that sort of, you want to be very lenient, but if you know for sure, which you can know for sure, then I'd say it's not aggressive, even if they yet used it in that aggressive way.
I would say whenever
It's
we're talking about like this sort of like pre-crime, where you think an aggression is about to occur, so you want to use force to
mm-hmm.
stop it. I think in all of those situations you are risking committing aggression,
Oh yeah,
because we are constrained
100%.
to,
I agree with you.
yeah, because we're constrained to imperfect information. Um,
Yes,
there's always that sort of like
I
Cartesian doubt of like, sure, this
I
person was like holding a gun up to this other person, but maybe they're like filming a viral TikTok or something like that.
yeah, like you could never be 100% certain,
Yeah,
100% certain about almost anything, right? I would say that you could, and you're right that when it comes to pre-crime, trying to prevent crimes before they happen, there's a huge risk that someone wasn't going to commit the act that you're trying to stop them from doing, right? That is a
yeah,
huge risk all the time. And so you have to you have to watch it. You have to watch it. That's why I'm saying you want to be extremely lenient. Because in the end, all these enforcement of laws, all this business by people. And so the only way that you can be better, you can design better systems and that'll help, right? Like we have sort of levels of judiciary and you go up the level. And that actually goes all the way back to Moses when he had,
right.
I always think this is super cool, where he's judging everyone and he's getting burned. So Aaron's like, Moses, you got to stop. You got to have other people do some of the judging. And so everyone gets divided into groups of 10, and then they pick one guy, and then they go together and they pick groups of 10, and they pick one guy, and so on and so forth. And eventually, if you can't solve the problem in your group, you go to the next group, and the next group, and eventually you get up to Moses, who deals with them if no one else can deal with them.
Yeah.
And so that is a lot easier to get the correct answer.
But is it
But in the
correct
end,
though? Does
what
that
do you mean, is it correct?
does that um approximate truth? Just because like say like it's wise men or say that it's the majority or anything else like that, does that mean that the final conclusion will even approximate truth?
Not necessarily. Obviously, there's some you hear about it in politics where people who are getting like criminally charged, arrested, they get convicted even when clearly they weren't
Mm. Because what I would
deserving of
say
that.
is,
You hear stories of that, right?
yeah,
I would say that it's when it comes to sort of the judicial system, it's not like will we always get the right answer? It's we're trying to get the right answer as much as we can because we can't go without. Like there's no way to have no legal. I don't think there's a way to have no legal system. I think you're either okay. There is a way you can have a legal system, but I think that that's not. It's better. No legal system is better than a really bad legal system. No legal system is much worse than a at least somewhat okay legal system.
right, and I think
Where like if you
that's
just had
sorry, go on.
it,
Oh,
I think like if you're in the Wild West and there's the law is like not even the Wild West because the Wild West had like shit parts of the states and there were actual like lawmen. I'm getting a phone call.
I'll let you.
But
Oh, you good?
I
Um,
would say yeah,
I would say one, there's book. I think it's called The Not So Wild West. The crime rates in the West weren't actually that bad, and it's kind of just because we're all soft and squishy and we bleed out easily. And if everyone has the great equalizer of a firearm, then even if you're the best shot, everybody sleeps, so on and so forth. Um, the crime rate is actually
Like, because
naturally. Hmm,
yeah, no, you're right. Because even
yeah.
how about like you're a Mongol horse pirate band, and you're raiding into Europe, and then you steal things, and then you run away, and no one can you, and no one can catch you. It's not good,
Yeah.
right?
It's that
Or
centralization of
you're you.
power that leads to that criminality.
Well, would say that but I would say if you had no legal system, you had no way to actually adjudicate. You might still mob justice oftentimes gets it wrong more often. Mob rule gets it wrong more
I
often
agree.
than judicial systems do,
Yeah.
unless the judicial system's really correct.
I'm no
And so
fan of
mob justice
democracy.
is what. I mean,
Yeah.
either. I
Um,
think it's. I think it's just. I think more people should be restricted from voting because the whole purpose of voting is just. This is a little bit of a tangent. The whole purpose of voting is just to get the best result possible. And so, if keeping, I would say that the only people who should get to vote are people who are married, who have children, and they're not divorced and they're taking care of their children.
gotcha.
Because I think those people are more likely to care about the future. So I don't know.
I want to go
I
back to
go
like this idea that you've expressed that like some legal system is better than no legal system. And
as long as the legal system isn't horribly corrupt.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
an okay legal
most
system is
legal
better than
systems are
that.
better than no legal system. Okay
Mm-hmm.
legal system. I would say that in terms of defining the law itself, the legislature is completely unnecessary. Natural law, libertarian natural law, precisely defined with a precise ontology and everything, is all that is necessary to have a legal code. Um,
So
the
you're saying that we can objectively determine what the law should be, and so we don't need legislatures?
yes,
Yeah, I would agree that we can objectively determine at least large amounts of the law. But I'd say that the point of legislatures is that you need someone who can hold accountable when they, because people aren't going to agree. Like, you and I don't agree. Like,
oh yeah, we don't
you
agree right
talk to
now.
any libertarian that can natural law, they're not going to agree. They're saying, "Oh, natural laws are great,"
I think a few are
but
starting to
it's not.
get together and everything. And I sent you the Dave
Obviously, you can have
Smith.
groups of people together.
Yeah, I sent you like the Dave
Uh,
Smith Liquid Zulu debate, and that was kind of the sort of contention that they were having. It's a little bit of like party infighting, but the major contention between them
mhm.
was Liquid Zulu is a hard line, non-aggression like follower. He holds the principle hard line. Dave Smith is not. So there's the you brought up the example of like stealing a cookie and would you shoot them in the back as they were running away. The example that they were talking about was would you steal a penny to stop your children from being tortured? And
That's a funny question.
yeah,
Um, well, I'd say maybe. I don't know if it would even be stealing at that point because you're not intent, like you don't want to steal, and so it's a different sort of action. I could
well,
murder
it would still
someone
be stealing.
to save my children.
If the owner
Well,
of
it
the
depends.
penny didn't want you to steal it, if you don't have the consent of the owner, then it would be stealing.
Yeah, but they might be obligated to give it to you in order to keep your children from getting tortured. And then if they're not giving it to you, then it would be stealing. It wouldn't be stealing because if they're obligated to give it to you and then they don't, then it's actually yours. And so if you manage to acquire it against their will, it's just that never happened in your life.
How is it yours? How does it become yours? Just because like you want it really badly?
If they have an obligation to give it to you, not that you want it really. This is this would be a direct moral sort of principle. It would this in the 1300s, where if you were starving to death and you man it, and you went, you tried to get, and you couldn't get any work, and then you went and you begged the people who could, you begged, and no one would give you anything, and there was someone who has enough food that they're not going to die, then actually they're obligated to give it to you, and then after you ask them for it and they wouldn't give it to you, it's actually yours, and so if you steal it, in air quotes, it's not actually stealing, it's actually yours, is the idea.
How are you getting that obligation? Like, what's your justification for that obligation?
Justification. Well, if it's sort of a, people are obligated to, if they have enough food and you're starving to death, they're obligated to give you something. That's it. That's the obligation. Just from love your neighbor as.
I,
And so, if that is the case, and you've exhausted all other available opportunities, including asking them directly, and they still said no, even though they know your situation. Like if they know what they're doing, then they were obligated to give it to you, and then they didn't, and so then it's actually yours. Because if someone's obligated to give you something, it's not theirs; it's yours, right? Like definitionally.
I, I'm still
Like
trying
if
to see,
I
like,
own, if
it
I have,
it is the case that you're starving. It is the case that they won't starve without this food that you want. Um, how are you getting
there's
an
no other
ought
way.
from that is?
I would say, as I said, moral, everything moral comes to love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And so, if part of loving your neighbor is sort of to that level, right? Where if I'm not going to starve to death, I have no, even if they're not, even if they should give it to me, I don't have enough of a justification to use force because, as I said before, like with the case of the cookie, I can't kill someone if they're running away. If that isn't like my lifeline.
S-
So it's that sort of when it gets to that sort of serious of a level.
w-
Sorry, I don't have time to explain this. I actually have to.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you. Well, thank you for coming on.
Mm-hmm.
We
Thank you
can
very much.
have a conversation another time. Maybe get into that God existence conversation.
Oh yeah, I would be happy to do that. I'm not saying I'm going to be the best at that. I know how well I did here because it's hard to tell sometimes, but it was fun, so that was good.
Yeah, I'm glad. Glad you had a good time. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Mm. Have a,
Uh, I
have
wish
a
you a
good rest of
beautiful
your
night.
day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You too. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Have a beautiful night. Well, that was that. Thank you everybody for joining the stream, and if you stuck around this far, you're watching the VOD. Thank you very much for doing so, and don't really have any announcements to get into. Thank you for sticking around. That's conversation seemed to go in many different directions, but I'm glad we were able to bring it back to ethics for the most part. It wasn't the sort of like hardline ethics conversation, but hope there were some good parts in it. And apologies for its mic quality. Um, Either case, thank you everybody for watching.